Let's grab a coffee, strap on our fedoras, grab our whips, and dive into the treasure trove that is the Indiana Jones franchise. A series that redefined adventure, and it made archaeology look cooler than it has any right to be. And it probably gave a lot of people the idea of studying archaeology, including me. But reality and the ideal are two different things. Let's start with Raiders of the Lost Ark, released in 1981. This is where it all began, with Steven Spielberg and George Lucas birthing the perfect cinematic storm. Archaeologist-adventurer Indiana Jones, played by Harrison Ford, races against the Nazis to recover the Ark of the Covenant, a biblical artifact rumored to make armies invincible. With iconic moments like the boulder chase, the bar fight in Nepal, and the gruesome face-melting finale, Raiders isn't just a movie, it's a cultural cornerstone. Behind the scenes, casting nearly went in a different direction. Tom Selleck was the original pick for Indy, but a contractual obligation to Magnum left the role open for Ford. And Ford just finished The Empire Strikes Back. Thankfully, Spielberg and Lucas struck gold, solidifying him as a cinematic icon. The sequel to its predecessor, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, was released in 1984. And it wasn't actually a sequel but a prequel. And this is the dark one. Spielberg himself called it too dark. Probably after rewatching the human heart extraction scene and wondering what 1984 Spielberg was on. Just recently he mentioned this again, explaining that this movie was far too dark for his taste. It's definitely darker, gorier and more controversial than the first film. So Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom is actually set before Raiders. Indy teams up with Willie Scott, a screaming lounge singer. And Short Round, a pin-sized driver who somehow makes child labor seem adorable. Together they face a cult in India obsessed with stones and sacrifice. To sum it up, Indy must retrieve the Sankara stones and free enslaved children. Now, the last entry from the original trilogy was released in 1989 and it was called Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Steven Spielberg and George Lucas aimed to recapture the adventurous spirit of Raiders while adding emotional depth. And they succeeded. Sean Connery joined the cast as Indy's estranged father, Professor Henry Jones Sr., in a Grail quest tinged with father-son bonding. Together they face Nazis, deadly puzzles and their own stubborn personalities. This is intolerable! While seeking the Holy Grail. From the Venice Canal chase to the knight who has been chilling in a cave for 700 years. This film perfectly balances action, humor, Dad! Oh, Dad! Oh, Dad! What? And heart.
I thought I'd lost you, boy.
By the way, the young Indiana sequence featuring River Phoenix was added as a nod to fans curious about Indy's origins. And it also explains his fear of snakes. And this pretty much sums up the complete trilogy. But there's even more. 19 years after The Last Crusade, they decided to release another movie. So Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was released in 2008. The polarizing fourth entry brought Indy into the atomic age, trading Nazis for Soviets and biblical artifacts for alienish crystal skulls. Shia LaBeouf joined as Mutt, Indy's motorcycle-riding greaser son, while Cate Blanchett played the cartoonishly evil Soviet scientist Irina Spalko. This movie leaned heavily into the absurd. Aliens, nukes, and psychic powers. And it divided its fans. Still, its set pieces, like a jungle car chase involving sword fights, showed flashes of the old Indy magic. Spielberg and Lucas stood by their choices, even as fans debated the merits of fridge-based survival. And another 15 years later, in 2023, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny was released. It's the fifth entry of the series and probably the last one we will see Harrison Ford in. So this final film gave Indy a heartfelt send-off. Set against the backdrop of the space race, the story revolves around the titular Dial of Destiny, a device that manipulates time. Alongside his witty goddaughter, Helena, played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Indy races against a group of neo-Nazis who want to rewrite history. James Mangold took over directional duties from Spielberg, delivering a film steeped in nostalgia while confronting the toll of time on its aging hero. With Ford still managing to bring grit and charisma to the role, Dial of Destiny served as both a tribute and a farewell to an irreplaceable character. And I prefer Dial of Destiny over Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Might be because of Mikkelsen. But since I have really detested the fourth movie, this is actually not such a huge compliment. I'm always careful to not just join the crowd and scream. So I watched the fourth and the fifth movie for a second time. And I hate to admit it, but the crowd is simply right. Both movies lack too much of the classic indie feeling. Still, they are entertaining enough to finish them. And the ending of the fifth movie was actually kinda sweet. I think they should have included Short Round. He was definitely a more defining character for the Indiana Jones franchise than Helena was. And then again, why establish new characters when it's planned to be a goodbye? It's not too far-fetched that they brought in Helena's character for a reason. Could be a hint. And I was instantly reminded of the ending part of Uncharted 4, where you played Nathan Drake's daughter for a moment. It just felt like the introduction to a new character who might continue the legacy. Now in the case of Indiana Jones, this might not ever happen, because the character of Helena wasn't received very well. And that is for a reason. The roots of Indiana Jones run deep in the adventure serials and pulp stories of the 1930s and 40s. Lucas and Spielberg wanted to create a modern homage to those cliffhanger-packed tales. Movies like The Treasure of the Sierra Madre in 1948 and Secret of the Incas in 1954 were key inspirations. And the latter was starring Charlton Heston in an outfit eerily similar to Indy's. Indiana's iconic look was designed to evoke a sense of rugged practicality, from the leather jacket to the fedora that's always miraculously within reach. Behind the scenes, Spielberg insisted on practical stunts wherever possible, which often left Ford battered and bruised. And I guess that is one of the reasons why the old trilogy is far better than everything that came afterwards. It just felt, well, real. Now it has to be mentioned that the adventure genre that Indiana Jones helped define has struggled to maintain its footing in recent years. While The Mummy in 1999 was a worthy successor, modern films like Jungle Cruise and Uncharted often feel more like a shallow imitation. And before I forget to mention it, of course we've seen Michael Douglas in some sort of adventurous romance as well. It was called Romancing the Stone and it was released in 1984. And it spawned a sequel called The Jewel of the Nile. And I think those two movies are definitely enjoyable for everyone that liked Indiana Jones. Just like the first National Treasure movie with Nicolas Cage, which was released in 2004. But no matter which adventure movie you name, Indy remains the gold standard. No matter how you put it, Indiana Jones became an icon, and he made a whole generation realize that the past can actually be quite the adventure. But he didn't just conquer cinema, he also whipped his way into video games. Early entries like Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis in 1992 captured the spirit of the films with a gripping point-and-click adventure that many fans consider a better sequel than Crystal Skull. And I second that. The franchise has had its missteps. Staff of Kings, anyone? But Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is actually a pretty good game. Developed by Machine Games, the studio behind the acclaimed Wolfenstein series, and published by Bethesda, this game is as close to the movies as we will ever get. Machine Games has a reputation for blending engaging storytelling with intense gameplay, so expectations are high. Todd Howard, the game's executive producer, has described it as a passion project, and surprisingly, it feels like that. Even though I'm still not sure if the first-person perspective was the best thing to do. Because games like Tomb Raider and Uncharted have shown that third-person action games work quite well. So we are already used to third-person in adventure games. But then again, if you played Escape from Butcher Bay, you will be alright. It makes the game pretty immersive, and getting used to it won't take much more than an hour. With cutscenes almost 4 hours long, and a setting between Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade, specifically 1937. This game feels like a part of the original trilogy. Well, at least more than the latest 2 movies did.
Well done.
Maybe I'm just propitiated because of the Warhammer 40k game we just recently got, or the announcement of Doom: The Dark Ages, or Gears of War E-Day. But games like these feel like the late 90s and the early 2000s. And I didn't really expect a complete masterpiece. And well, it isn't. The enemy AI is pretty bad. Sometimes you just have to walk around a little bit too much. The pacing is rather slow, but that is because I'm not used to adventures anymore. So if you're actually here for an action game, I wouldn't recommend this one. But if you really enjoy the adventure part of games, then this one might be for you. And from a personal standpoint, I would say that this is the best indie game they have ever produced. Did I enjoy the latest Tomb Raider trilogy more? Well, probably. But that one was focused more on action. And indie doesn't even try to be like that. The Great Circle gave us a promise and delivered. And I cannot remember that I have ever played a game just like that, which makes it actually exciting. For someone who grew up with the original trilogy, this was just fun and nothing felt actually forced. So take that as you will. And to come back to the movies one more time, there will most certainly be another Indiana Jones movie. And no, we will definitely not see Harrison Ford again. Because the Dial of Destiny really seemed like a farewell to Ford's character. At the same time, his departure leaves some room for other characters to arrive.
Hello there.
And if we know a thing about Hollywood, it's that they really like money. And well-established franchises, more often than not, seem to generate that. I mean, just have a look at Star Wars. They could actually do quite the same with Indiana Jones, even if they have to change a few things to appeal to a wider audience. And one of them, of course, is the main character. Especially since Harrison Ford is over 80 years old. The man can't go on forever. We will see what the future holds. Now, let me know your opinion about the Indiana Jones franchise. How would you rank the original trilogy? And did you play any of the video games? That's it for today, and I'll see you next time.